confirmation that President Tsai met with U.S. Congress members. She's now prepared to meet House Speaker Kevin McCarthy.
I'm Rick Lau for TaiwanPlus, here in Taoyuan, where Taiwanese billionaire Terry Gou has just announced he will be seeking the presidential nomination for opposition party the Kuomintang.
Top EU leaders arrive in China as the bloc reassesses its relationship with Beijing. Plus, a look at Taiwan's paper offerings for the dead. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Betty Chen. President Tsai is on the last leg of her trip to the Americas. She arrived in Los Angeles on Tuesday after a visit to Belize, a diplomatic ally in Central America. Before she left Belize, Tsai attended an exhibit showcasing the achievements of the Women's Economic Empowerment Project, an initiative supported by Taiwan. She also visited a sheep and goat breeding facility that was built with Taiwanese help. Tsai's trip has been marked by high-level meetings with officials in the U.S. and Central America. Taiwan's presidential office earlier confirmed she met with Hakeem Jeffries and U.S. senators during her two-day stop in New York. Tsai is scheduled to meet with U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy Wednesday morning, U.S. time. For more on Tsai's trip to the U.S., Bing Wang spoke to Leslie Liao, our reporter traveling with the president.
What's the latest from the Tsai camp?
So the latest is that they are, this meeting is going to happen, which is very interesting because everything we've done in the United States so far, when we were back in New York, it came last minute. The government wasn't going to confirm anything, and they told us very last minute before anything happened. But before we came into LA, as you know, McCarthy's office confirmed the meeting before Tsai. And after that, it was Taiwanese officials seemed to be a little more open about sharing information. However, at the same time, it's still in line or on par with what U.S. officials are willing to say. And not only that, but when we took off from Belize and flew into Los Angeles, the presidential office announced that President Tsai met with top Democrat leader Hakeem Jeffries as well as 3 senators. And that's a big deal as well.
And what's the atmosphere like before the McCarthy meeting?
Strangely calm as we drove into LA. Whereas in New York, when President Tsai arrived at the hotel, there were protesters and supporters. When we came to LA today, we didn't really see any signs of protests, though there were barricades around the hotel. However, we also saw President Tsai's supporters who were here as well, but they were wrapping up and just about cleaned up by the time we arrived. The anticipation is high. The whole world is watching this meeting with, and they're thinking about what's going to happen. We were told on the way here that there's about, if I check my notes, I think 160 to 180 media outlets are going to be at the Reagan Library tomorrow for this event.
Again, that was Leslie Liao speaking with Bing Wang. China has announced it's conducting maritime inspection operations in the Taiwan Strait. It comes as Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen prepares to meet with U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy in California. According to Chinese state media, the operation will last 7 days. It's not yet clear how many marine vessels are taking part in the operation. For more on President Tsai's upcoming meeting with U.S. House Speaker McCarthy and China's potential reaction, our reporter Jaime Okan spoke to Derek Grossman from the Rand Institute.
Can you talk about the significance of Tsai Ing-wen meeting with U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy in California rather than meeting him in Taiwan?
Taiwan wants to demonstrate that it has a very close and productive partnership with the United States in order to bolster deterrence against potential for Chinese military attack. And the United States, for its part, has increasing concerns about China's behavior in the Strait. In other words, it's increasing, pressure campaign against Taiwan, diplomatic, economic, and military. And I think you can throw in intelligence and psychological in there as well. Meeting with Tsai, specifically at this juncture, from the U.S. perspective, or at least from Speaker McCarthy's perspective, bolstered Tsai as the leader of Taiwan and as somebody who is a voice for good in the Taiwan Strait and a country that, in the case of Taiwan, needs to be respected. Its de facto sovereignty needs to be respected and not interfered with by China.
China has warned U.S. and Taiwan about repeating disasters from past mistakes. Do you think we're going to see a similar reaction to when Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan?
Speaker Pelosi visiting Taiwan elicited, the strongest reaction that we've ever seen from Beijing. And sitting here today on April 4th, the day before, Speaker McCarthy and President Tsai meet up, it doesn't seem like China is going to do the same thing it did in the aftermath of the Pelosi visit. But that can change, when we go back to Pelosi's visit, we saw that China encircled Taiwan in 6 different locations. It fired several missiles over Taiwan's sovereign airspace. So these are things that are certainly of concern, but we do not see the preparations in the way that we saw in the aftermath of the Pelosi visit.
You argue in a report that the change in venue of the meeting from Taiwan to California actually encourages China to take a more aggressive stance. Can you explain what you mean by that?
So according to a Washington Post article from a few weeks ago, Tsai's team messaged McCarthy's team and wanted to change the venue from Taipei to somewhere in the United States, right? And they settled on Simi Valley in Southern California. It's my view that China is going to look at that and say, well, our pressure strategy that we have been using is working, because now we have been able to dissuade Tsai and Speaker McCarthy from meeting in Taipei.
Taiwan's former president Ma Ying-jeou is on the final leg of his historic and controversial trip to China. On Wednesday, he visited a major deep-water port in the eastern province of Zhejiang. Ma was given a tour of Yangshan Port, which is located in Hangzhou Bay, an area south of Shanghai. The port sees significant shipping traffic and has been a frequent stop for Taiwanese politicians visiting China for many years. Terry Guo, the founder of Apple supplier Foxconn and one of Taiwan's richest people, has announced he will make a bid for the presidency. Rick Glauert reports.
Terry Gou, the billionaire founder of Foxconn, which manufactures Apple products, arrives back in Taiwan after a trip to the US. And at the airport, a big announcement. He wants to be Taiwan's next president.
据朝先进科技国家前进，是台湾人民跨世代的愿望，也是台民争取参选2024总统的动力。
This is not 72-year-old Gou's first bid for Taiwan's top job. In 2019, he lost out on the nomination for candidate for opposition party the Kuomintang, or KMT. He later quit the party, which he apologized for profusely as he made his bid to represent the KMT at next year's elections. Despite big wins in local elections last year, polls show support is slumping for a KMT presidency. The party is beset by controversy and infighting, but has said they will pick their candidate by mid-June. A high-profile figure like Gou could prove popular with voters.
在今天如此艰难的时刻，我身为一个怀有全球视野、拥有多方关系的国际企业人，我应该挺身而出，解决传统政治人物不能解决的危机。
Taiwan's ruling party, the Democratic Progressive Party, or the DPP, has only one candidate in mind. Vice President Lai Ching-te is seen as a natural successor to largely popular current President Tsai Ing-wen, who cannot run because of 2-term limits.
Then sometimes it does play out as a kind of difference between pro-US and pro-China politics. And the DPP, as a historically pro-independence party, is now thought of as more pro-US. The KMT as the pro-China party, or as having become the pro-China party, and is seen as more anti-US.
Gou says Taiwan doesn't have to choose between the two.
我们身处美中对抗的焦点，同时又是美中经济的连接点。台湾有条件成为 化解美中对抗的关键影响力。
Presidential elections here in Taiwan are now less than 1 year away, and there's plenty at stake from the rising cost of living to facing up to the threat from China. All eyes are now on the KMT and whether they think a figure like Guo can help turn things around for the party. Leon Lien and Rick Lauert in Taoyuan for TaiwanPlus.
To find out more about Terry Guo's presidential ambitions and what they mean for Taiwanese politics, Rick Lauert spoke to political scientist Lev Knockman.
Terry Gou is known as a businessman, a billionaire, one of Taiwan's richest people. He's not, a mainstay on Taiwan's political scene. Could you tell us a little bit about him and how he might disrupt or change the presidential race between the two major parties?
Yeah, so Terry Gou, of course, famous for being the former leader of Foxconn, the company most famous for helping to make iPhones in China. And Terry Gou has tried to run for president in the past before he made some very big, dramatic announcements saying that the goddess Mazu had visited him in a dream, telling him to run. And he ran for the KMT primary last time and did not win. And as a result, he ended up actually dropping out of the KMT. But now, of course, it was kind of expected that if Terry Gou was going to try to run again, that he would go back to the KMT.
Terry Gou obviously thinks that he is the one that will bring the KMT victory next year. Who might he appeal to, or what sort of characteristics or political background or experience do you think he has that might mean that he's the one that could win the presidency?
I think what he would argue is that he can appeal to the moderate voter a bit more than, say, some of the deep blue candidates. I think in particular, the KMT needs to be able to tap into that kind of middle vote. And I think Terry Gou is hoping that he's going to be able to offer that appeal. Now, whether or not, the moderate voters in Taiwan buy that is a different story. I think there's been some public opinion polling that looks at Terry Gou's name, and I don't think it's as popular as someone like Ho Yo-yi is right now. Now, I think Terry Gou is going to try to do quite a bit of campaigning over the next few weeks to try to show that he could be the person that is the moderate, pragmatic KMT candidate. But whether or not the KMT voter base is receptive to that, I think is a different story.
And could you tell us a little bit more about how questions over Taiwan's relations with both the US and with China hangs over Taiwan politics? And how might Terry Gou try to position himself in that big question?
So I think everyone is looking very closely to the US-Taiwan relationship going into 2024, especially with Tsai being there right now. And of course, the ongoing question of if there is another DPP president, will Taiwan and the PRC be able to ever establish formal channels of communication? And because Terry Gou, I think, is going to try to position himself as someone who can both establish formal channels with the PRC and maintain a good relationship with the US, I think that's really what he's going to try to campaign on.
That was reporter Rick Lauert speaking to political scientist Lev Knockman about Terry Gou's presidential bid. Coming up, one of Taiwan's most renowned traditional opera troupes celebrates its 70th anniversary. Stay tuned.
Thank you for watching Taiwan Plus. For more great news from Taiwan and around the world, visit TaiwanPlus.com and download the app.
Welcome back. You're watching Taiwan Plus News. In the U.S., Donald Trump has lashed out after he became the first former or sitting president to face criminal charges.
Incredibly, we are now a failing nation. We are a nation in decline. And now these radical left lunatics want to interfere with our elections by using law enforcement. We can't let that happen.
Trump was charged with 34 counts of falsifying business records on Tuesday. The case centers on hush money paid to suppress stories of Trump's alleged infidelity affairs and of an illegitimate child. The former president denies all charges. At his home in Florida, Trump said the case was political. He called it election interference ahead of his second run for president in next year's vote. Trump did not offer evidence to support his claim. The president of France has said there's no reason for the world to fall into antagonistic blocs as he began a visit to Beijing. Emmanuel Macron and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, who also arrives in China on Wednesday, are scheduled to hold talks with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. Beijing's position on Russia's invasion of Ukraine is expected to be at the top of the agenda. Von der Leyen last week said Beijing's stance towards Moscow will be a determining factor in ties going forward. The two presidents are the latest in a flurry of European leaders to visit China as the bloc seeks to balance concerns over Ukraine and human rights with economic ties. To find out more about the visit, our reporter James Chater spoke with Zsuzsa Anna Ferenczi, an expert in EU-Taiwan relations based in Taipei.
There are many issues on the table during this visit, including export controls, economic coercion, as well as Beijing's position on the war in Ukraine. What do you think will be the Europeans' key objectives of this visit to China?
I think the number one priority will be the war in Ukraine. Now, ever since the war started, the EU wanted China to play a more constructive role, and clearly this has not been the case. China has amplified Russia's disinformation, but also has shown political support, and this did not go well down in Europe. I think Beijing has understood that there is European unity behind the situation in Ukraine, and the fact that the two leaders travel together sends a strong message to Beijing that there is European unity.
China did hit back at a recent speech by von der Leyen in which she said the bloc needed to be bolder on China. How would you assess the mood right now between the EU and China?
Well, EU-China relations have been deteriorating for quite some time now, and I think we have hit a very low point in which political and economic issues are equally on the table. So I think also Macron's visit will be an opportunity for Macron and also the president of the European Commission to try to discuss the lack of reciprocity, the trade imbalance, the economic ties, and all the many grievances that Europeans have with China. But at the same time, I think we need to be realistic. I do not expect any major breakthroughs.
Do you think the European presence in China while Taiwan's president meets with the US House Speaker could in some way temper Beijing's reaction?
Europe is not interested in going back to business as usual, but there is an opportunity now to rebuild perhaps cooperation on in a more balanced way. However, I do not think that this will impact the way China regards its core issues on which it does not compromise, meaning Taiwan. So because Beijing likes to compartmentalize issues, I believe that it will be very careful to project an image that Taiwan remains a core national interest and it will not compromise on it.
That was EU-Taiwan relations expert Zsuzsa Anna Ferenczi speaking with James Chater. A conservation group in the central city of Taichung says it saved more than 340 short-eared owls since 2006. Bird rescuers say the owls, which migrate to Taiwan during the winter season, often get caught in nets around airports. They've recorded more than 10 cases of stuck owls this year alone. Rescuers say the birds are also under threat of being caught and kept by people. Short-eared owls are not listed as an endangered species, but conservationists are working to make sure the owls and any other migratory bird species traveling to Taiwan remain protected. For centuries, people in parts of East Asia have burned bamboo and paper objects for the dead. These include models of houses, clothes, and anything else that might be useful in the afterlife. This tradition is still alive in Taiwan. And today, as the country commemorates the dead for the Tomb Sweeping Festival, John Van Trieste visits a model builder to learn more about this craft.
From a fully furnished bathroom to a cozy bedroom and a stylish poolside lounge, This model dream house has everything, but this is not a dollhouse. It's an offering to a dead person. The house is designed to be burned and sent into the next world, thereby ensuring the person who's deceased can enjoy these luxuries in the afterlife. Paper and bamboo models, which are ritually burned for the dead, are called zhijia in Mandarin. Here, in the offices of Xis, a Taiwanese company that builds them, there's a range of examples. Chief consultant Frank Han says the origins of these objects date back to ancient China.
汉朝以前的时候，也都是所谓用那个活人陪葬，好，然后或者是埋真的东西这一类进去。好，那从这样开始，然后发现有些东西不太对，包括财宝的部分很容易被人家拿走，所以开始用泥土雕塑，就包括人偶这一类的泥土雕塑或者是木头雕刻。然后纸发明了以后，用纸来做替代。
The craft has spread with ethnic Chinese migration, including to Taiwan. Over time, the models changed along with people's lifestyles. These days, some model builders custom make tributes that reflect a person's interests and personality. Given their complexity, one piece can take 2 weeks or longer to make. The more extravagant can cost thousands of US dollars. But this is all relatively recent. As Frank explains, that's part of the reason his daughter founded this company. When her grandfather suddenly died in 2007, she wanted to burn a model of a hot spring resort for him, as a trip they'd planned to a hot spring resort in Japan never ended up happening. But none of the makers would make one for her. So she made her own. The result was a big hit with her relatives, and went on to launch what's become something of a family trade. It's not just hot spring resorts either. These days you can offer departed loved ones whole restaurants filled with their favorite foods, fancy cars, or even the latest smartphones and video game consoles. The builders are conscious of keeping up with the latest technological developments.
最早的话，当时大概是什么 PS3、PS2 那个游戏机，好这一类的部分很多。然后后来因为大家都一直有在更新，那个 PS3 弄得很多，然后到 PS4。
Most of this company's customers are in Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Malaysia, all places with many ethnic Chinese. But orders also come in from far beyond Asia.
在欧洲国家，那像是德国、法国、意大利这部分是比较多，还有英国，他们有那个doll house，就是娃娃屋，很多人在收藏那个迷你的娃娃屋。
Frank says some of the company's models are even on display at Paris's Musée du Quai Branly as works of art. In the end, he says, making and ritually burning these objects is as much about giving solace to the living as it is about giving gifts to the dead. Alex Chen and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's National Opera Company is turning 70 this year. To mark the occasion, the group is set to perform a 2-weekend special in May in 2 major Taiwan cities. Joy Sung looks back at the opera troupe's remarkable history.
Fans of Taiwanese opera are likely to recognize this performer in an instant. This is Wang Hailing, known to many theater lovers as the Empress of Taiwan Bangzi Opera. A hugely successful artist in her own right, Wang has also helped raise a whole generation of flourishing performers in her role as the art director of the Taiwan Bangzi Opera Company. The theater troupe is celebrating their 70th birthday this year. To mark the occasion, they'll be holding 2 weekend special performances in May, one in the country's southern city, Kaohsiung, and the other in the capital, Taipei. The group will be performing the fantasy play Defender. Lead actress Xiao Yangling explains how even now the opera troupe is still working to mix new and traditional storytelling styles.
以往传统戏剧也没有这样子的一个表演方式、表演方法，对，所以对我们来讲也是一个新的尝试。
The company is famous for bridging extremes, whether it's the old and new or the east and west. These are just some of the ways the Taiwan Bangzi Opera Company have been developing their unique Taiwanese style over the past 7 decades. Bangzi opera, or clapper opera as it's known in the West, originated from China. The troupe was originally formed as part of the military during World War II to entertain soldiers on the Vietnamese island of Phu Quoc, where France was detaining many Chinese Nationalist Party troops. It then relocated to Kaohsiung City in 1953. While still part of the military, it was there that the group established its presence as an arts company in Taiwan. Fast forward to 2012, after Taiwan set up its culture ministry, the group was officially recognized as a national performance troupe. In their 70th anniversary shows, the cast will include budding performers from Taiwan's Performing Arts College. According to playwright Liu Jianguo, the diversity of new, up-and-coming talent helps the group break new ground over the years and form an inseparable bond.
雕刻呢，更强调的是一群人的团体合作，所以其实在舞台上的演员也有原本他是唱歌仔戏，他是唱京剧，现在都变一家人，都变成伙伴。
The troupe has been key in passing down tradition, all while expanding its reach and artistic style, from the intricate hand-sewn garments to the extravagant choreography. Even after 70 years, the Taiwan Bangzi Opera Company shows no signs of slowing down, and it's set to continue showcasing its unique art form well into the future. Andy Xue and Joyce Zhen for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. Remember to download the TaiwanPlus app for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, today we leave you with images of the first public appearance of endangered Sumatran tiger cubs at the UK's Chester Zoo. I'm Betty Chen. Take care and see you next time.